The air smelled like leftover coffee and something burnt, maybe toast from the morning. I dragged my suitcase into the house, expecting the sound of laughter, the clatter of dishes, and that warm scent of roasted turkey that always filled the place this time of year. But it was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. It was heavy quiet, like something wasn't right. The lights were dim. The hallway was dark. And I could feel my chest tighten with each step I took. I called out a soft, "Hello?" But nothing came back. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint noise of a TV playing in the other room. I peeked into the dining room, and that's when I saw her. Grandma. Sitting alone at the head of the table. She wasn't even eating a proper meal. Just slowly chewing a cold sandwich, her shoulders hunched forward like she hadn't spoken to anyone in hours. I stood there frozen for a moment. Her silver hair was pinned back the way she always wore it on special days. She looked up and smiled softly when she saw me, but her eyes looked tired, like she'd been waiting. I rushed over and kissed her forehead. "Where is everyone?" I asked. She just sighed and looked toward the kitchen counter. That's when I noticed the folded note. Just sitting there, plain as day, written in my sister's handwriting. I opened it with a shaky hand. The message was short, almost cruel in its bluntness. "We deserve this trip more than you. Enjoy Grandma's company." For a second I didn't breathe. My face felt hot, but my hands were ice cold. All the memories of sending them my Thanksgiving bonus so they could stock up the house, plan something nice, all of that just burned away in that moment. I looked at Grandma again. She didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I swallowed hard. There was a lump in my throat, but I refused to let it out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled, not out of happiness but because something deep inside me had suddenly turned calm. Colder. I kissed Grandma's hand gently and whispered, "Let's get you something warm to eat." I had been counting the days to come home for Thanksgiving. Even though work had been brutal, extra shifts, back-to-back overtime, I kept telling myself it would all be worth it once I walked through that front door and smelled cinnamon, gravy, and warm pie crust. I imagined Grandma's arms around me, the way she'd pat my back twice like she always did, and maybe, just maybe, this year would feel like family again. A week before the holiday, I'd sent my Thanksgiving bonus home. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover groceries, heating oil for the old furnace, maybe a small turkey, and even some decorations. I told them to use it to make Grandma feel special. After all, she was the heart of our home. I remember texting my sister, "Please make sure everything's set up before I land. I just want her to have a good day." But deep down I should have known better. My sister Rachel and her husband Brent had always been entitled. That's the nicest way I can put it. Growing up, Rachel was the one who cried when things didn't go her way, and somehow that always meant I had to give up what I had to fix it. And Brent? He just added fuel to her fire. A man who wore $600 shoes but complained about paying Grandma's pharmacy bills. So I hoped things had changed. I'd spent years trying to believe that maybe with age came maturity. Maybe this time they'd think beyond themselves. So I booked my ticket, packed the best bottle of wine I could afford, and flew home after a 14-hour shift, still in my work shoes. And then I walked into that dark house. No warmth. No smell of food. No music. Just Grandma eating a cold sandwich in silence. When I read the note, "We deserve this trip more than you. Enjoy Grandma's company." Something in me snapped, but not in the way people expect. I didn't scream. I didn't crumble. I didn't even let a tear fall. I took a deep breath, rolled up my sleeves, and started cleaning up the mess they'd left behind. Plates still in the sink from breakfast. Trash overflowing. I found the turkey I had ordered still frozen solid in the garage freezer. No one had even bothered to bring it in. Grandma tried to get up to help, but I gently pushed her back down into her chair. "Let me take care of this," I said softly. I reheated some soup, made grilled cheese with the last of the bread, and poured her a cup of tea. All the while she just watched me. Her eyes said everything. She didn't need to explain what had happened. She didn't want to speak poorly about her granddaughter, even after being abandoned on a holiday. That's the kind of woman she is. Quiet strength. Truth is, Grandma raised me more than my own mother ever did. While my parents traveled or fought or just disappeared into their own lives, Grandma was the one who showed up for school plays, doctor appointments, and broken hearts. She taught me how to sew a hem, bake apple pie from scratch, and never leave a person hungry, emotionally or otherwise. So that night I didn't cry. I tucked away the note in my purse, kissed Grandma's cheek and told her we were going to have our own Thanksgiving. Just us two. She gave me a weak smile and I gave her a real one in return. They thought they were teaching me a lesson by leaving. But they forgot who they left me with, the woman who taught me how to survive. I didn't say a word to Rachel or Brent. Not a text. Not a call. Not even a passive-aggressive post on social media. Silence was my weapon now. The next morning I packed Grandma's overnight bag, helped her put on her warmest coat, and brought her to my apartment. A cozy little place downtown, small but clean and quiet. I made her a hot breakfast, turned on her favorite channel and set her up on my couch with fluffy blankets and the heating pad she loved. She kept asking if it was okay for her to stay. I just smiled and said, "You raised me. You don't ever have to ask." Once she was settled in, I brewed myself a strong cup of coffee and opened my laptop. My hands were steady but my heartbeat was sharp and focused. It was time to figure out just how deep this betrayal went. I logged into my online banking account. The Thanksgiving bonus, $2,500, was gone. Not slowly, not piece by piece. All of it had been transferred out the same day I sent it. There was no hesitation, no consideration. Just gone. I clicked into the transfer history. The account it went to was linked to Rachel. Of course. I followed the money trail and that's when the real punch came. They hadn't just used the money for groceries or a small Airbnb getaway. The funds were funneled into a booking agency, and a quick search revealed exactly where my family had gone. A 5-star luxury beach resort in Miami. Oceanfront views. Personal butlers. Champagne brunches. Heated pools. Full-body massages. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Not out of shock, I knew they were selfish. But the level of audacity still had weight. They had left our elderly grandmother alone on a holiday while they sipped mimosas on the sand using money I worked 12-hour shifts to earn. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. They thought they'd left me with nothing but guilt. But they didn't know my history. Before switching careers, I worked in financial fraud investigation. I used to catch corporate thieves, scam artists, and shady small business owners hiding money where it didn't belong. I knew how to trace transactions, identify digital paper trails, and most importantly how to build a case so tight the target wouldn't even realize what hit them until the consequences arrived in a neat legal envelope. I opened a new document on my computer. Titled it, Family Financial Audit, Phase 1. First, I took screenshots of every transfer labeled and time-stamped. Then I dug into Rachel and Brent's spending over the last month. They weren't smart with their money. Credit card payments overdue. Car lease behind. Rent barely paid. My bonus had covered this lavish trip, but it wouldn't cover what came next. See, what they didn't know was that they had committed a form of digital fraud, unauthorized use of funds sent with a designated purpose. I had the text to prove I sent it for family groceries and Grandma's care. What they did was misappropriate funds. And I could report that. Quietly. Officially. But I wasn't in a rush. Revenge is best served slow. I started contacting a few former colleagues. People who still worked in compliance and legal at major banks. Asked some light hypothetical questions. Got confirmation that what they did wasn't just unethical, it was borderline criminal. Next, I ran a check on Rachel's business. She had started a small online boutique a few years ago. Guess who registered the domain? Me. Back when she didn't know how to use a computer properly and begged me for help. Which meant I still had back-end access. Including the merchant accounts. I didn't touch a thing. I'm not reckless. But I documented it all. Every vulnerability. Every misstep. If they thought leaving Grandma alone was bad, they had no idea what was coming. 3 days passed. Not a word from them. And then, their credit cards started declining. Not because I hacked them, but because I tipped off their provider about suspicious activity from Miami, and the fraud flag automatically locked their accounts. All perfectly legal. All traceable. That's when the calls started. First from Rachel. Then Brent. Then both. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. I let it ring. Let them sweat. Grandma and I were watching an old holiday movie sipping cocoa. The more they panicked, the calmer I became. The next morning, while Grandma was still sleeping on my couch, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and sat down at my laptop again. The sun hadn't even come up yet. But I wasn't tired. I felt sharp. Focused. Revenge wasn't just an emotion anymore. It was a process. A slow, deliberate one. I opened my banking app again and reviewed every transaction made from the bonus account. Flight bookings, 2 round-trip tickets to Miami. Business class. Booked within an hour of the money arriving. Then came the resort. 5 nights at a luxury oceanfront property. That alone cost over $1,700. I scrolled further. Spa services. In-room dining. Some boutique shopping. And finally a boat tour with champagne. All on my dime. They hadn't even tried to hide it. That was what stung the most. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the smugness. The assumption that I'd just accept it. That I was weak. That I wouldn't fight back. I picked up my phone and texted my cousin Angela. She was a family lawyer, sharp, discreet, and fiercely protective of me. Need help freezing a joint account. Not dramatic. Just time-sensitive. She replied within minutes. Call me. We jumped on a call and I explained everything. I told her about the bonus, the betrayal, and how Rachel and Brent used my funds without permission. I sent her screenshots and copies of the texts. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. He just asked one thing. Do you want to press charges later or just make it hurt enough that they remember never to mess with you again? I smiled. Let's just say I want them to feel it in their bones. Without getting my hands dirty. Angela laughed. Then I'll draft the freeze paperwork and connect you with a compliance officer at the bank. We'll flag the account. Quietly. By noon it was done. The joint account I once opened to help Rachel with family emergencies was now frozen. Blocked. Untouchable. The funds they had left were held in place, pending further review. And because I had legal proof of where the money originally came from, they couldn't touch a penny without my approval. But I wasn't finished. That afternoon, while Grandma and I baked cookies in my tiny kitchen, I excused myself for a few minutes. I stepped into the bedroom, pulled up the number for the resort in Miami and took a deep breath. When the receptionist answered, I softened my voice and used a polite but firm tone. Hi, I believe there's been suspicious activity on my card that was used for a reservation under Rachel Grayson. I'm the primary account holder and I didn't authorize those charges. She asked me a few questions to verify the account, which I had all the details for. Dates, booking confirmation, even the card number. She hesitated but then said she'd escalate the matter to the billing department and initiate a security review. That's all I needed. I hung up calmly, walked back to the kitchen and picked up the spoon again. Grandma looked up from the dough and smiled. You okay, sweetheart? I kissed her forehead. Never better. That night, as we watched another old movie together, I checked my phone. 10 missed calls. 4 texts. Rachel, are you messing with our account? Brent, did you do something to the cards? Everything's locked. We can't even get a cab. Rachel again, this isn't funny. We're stranded here. I didn't reply. I just turned the phone face down and passed Grandma another cookie. Let them feel a little of what they made her feel. Alone. Unimportant. Forgotten. That was only the beginning. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline and Grandma hummed softly while folding laundry beside me, my phone started buzzing on the table. At first it was just once, Rachel's name. I let it ring. Then again. Then Brent. Voicemail after voicemail. My screen lit up like a Christmas tree. I picked up the phone not to answer but just to watch. Please unblock the account, we're at the restaurant and it's saying declined, again. Another message followed. Hey, maybe the bank's flagging stuff because it's out of state? Can you just confirm things are okay? I poured myself a cup of tea and settled into the couch with Grandma. She was watching her favorite game show, slippers on, completely relaxed. Her presence filled the space with warmth. The very warmth they had robbed her of that Thanksgiving morning. I checked the resort's online reviews just for fun. It was the kind of place that served wine with lunch and had a dress code for breakfast. A far cry from the way we grew up. Ramen noodles and thrift store coats. And now they were there, without a working credit card in sight. A new message popped up. Hey, this is getting serious. We need to check out tomorrow and the hotel says they haven't been paid in full. They're threatening to charge us penalties. Please call back. I took a slow sip of tea and smiled. That wasn't even the best part yet. The next day I got a call from the hotel itself. Not surprising. I had flagged the card as compromised and I was listed as the card holder. The woman on the other end was professional, but the stress in her voice gave it away. We're reaching out to confirm a hold has been placed on the card associated with the Grayson reservation. They are currently unable to process payment for remaining charges. We'll need to resolve this with the account holder, or the guests may be asked to leave the premises. I gave a soft, understanding reply. Thank you for alerting me. The card was used without permission. I'll file a formal dispute today. She hesitated, then said, we'll proceed accordingly. I could picture them, sitting by the beach, maybe halfway through their fancy seafood platter, and then the manager walking up with a folded invoice and a tight smile. Maybe even whispering, do you have another form of payment? Rachel probably laughed at first. Brent might have bluffed. But when both their cards gave the same message, it would have hit them like a cold splash of seawater. Later that night, more messages. Grandma didn't even want to be alone, you don't understand. This wasn't supposed to go this far. Can we please talk? We'll explain everything. I'm your sister. You can't leave us like this. But I could. And I did. Because the truth was, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the years I spent trying to keep this family together. Driving across town after work to check on Grandma when no one else would. Sending grocery money even when I was behind on rent. Sacrificing vacations, relationships, time. All because I believed family meant something. And then Thanksgiving came and they couldn't even be bothered to say goodbye. Just a note. A selfish, heartless little note. We deserve this trip more than you. Enjoy Grandma's company. They didn't deserve anything. 3 days into their trip, they must have realized I wasn't going to respond. That's when the tone changed. Rachel sent another voice note. This time she was crying. I panicked, okay? We've both been stressed. Brent's job is shaky and you always seem to have things under control. We thought we'd just go clear our heads. We didn't mean to leave Grandma. He always has you. Please unblock the account so we can get home. I listened quietly, then pressed delete. That night, I tucked Grandma into bed and sat on the floor beside her for a while. She looked at me with soft, tired eyes. You okay, honey? I nodded. They're fine, I said gently. Just learning a little lesson in priorities. She chuckled under her breath. About time someone taught them. I stayed with her until she fell asleep, holding her hand, brushing her silver hair back from her face. He was always there for me when I was young. She was the only one who ever put me first. The next morning I got one final text. This hotel says we can't stay another night without full payment. We don't even have money for the ride back to the airport. I don't care about the trip anymore. Just please, help. I put the phone down and looked around my apartment. The smell of cinnamon from yesterday's baking still lingering in the air. Grandma was reading her puzzle book, humming something old and sweet. And in that moment I felt no guilt. No anger either. Just peace. Let them feel stranded. Let them feel desperate. Let them realize how easily things crumble when you step on the people holding you up. Their vacation was over. So was their free ride. And this was just the beginning. When they finally got back, I wasn't there to welcome them. The house was quiet, emptier than ever. I had already changed the locks a week before. Their suitcases still sat in the driveway, packed and ready, but with no place left to go inside. I stood across the street and watched as Rachel's car pulled up. Brent was behind the wheel, both of them tired and confused, faces pale like they'd been punched by reality. I didn't open the door. Instead, I walked over and pinned a legal notice on the front door, right where they couldn't miss it. The paper flapped slightly in the cold wind. The words were clear. This property is now under review for misuse of joint funds. All further communication should be directed to my attorney. No explanations. No begging. Just facts. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, trust, family. Things they had stolen from me and from Grandma. I could hear them from inside the car, their voices low, confused, desperate. Rachel kept saying, I don't understand. How could she do this? Brent was quiet, probably realizing just how deep they'd sunk. The neighborhood kids stopped by, curious about the suitcases and the locked door. A few neighbors shook their heads quietly. Word travels fast when family fights get ugly. But none of it mattered to me. Because inside I had something they never would. Grandma was safe. She wasn't just safe, she was happy. I had brought her here to my apartment, where she finally felt cared for and loved the way she deserved. That first morning she told me with a twinkle in her eye, You're stronger than I ever knew, kiddo. I smiled and said, You taught me. She smiled back, that warm smile that lights up a room, the kind that no selfish family drama can ever take away. Over the next few weeks, while Rachel and Brent scrambled to figure out their next move, I kept busy making sure Grandma had everything she needed. We baked pies, watched old movies, and sat on the porch watching sunsets. There was laughter again, real laughter. Me. I finally felt free. The silence they left behind wasn't empty. It was filled with dignity, strength, and the quiet power of someone who refuses to be broken. I think back to that Thanksgiving, the cold house, the cruel note, and the silence. They left me with Grandma thinking they had won. But Grandma gave me something far greater. A reason to smile again and a strength they'll never understand. Because sometimes the coldest revenge isn't the loudest. It's the one that stays with you, permanent, unshakable, and quietly final. And that's exactly what this was. I closed the door behind me and never looked back,